In 1940, a Polish army officer sat down with his resistance commanders and made a proposal that nobody in the room could quite believe. He would allow himself to be arrested by the Germans. He would enter Auschwitz concentration camp under a false name. He would organize a resistance network from the inside, document everything he saw, and then escape and tell the world. Nobody ordered him to do this. Nobody asked. He volunteered. He walked into the most dangerous place in occupied Europe on purpose, with a false identity card in his pocket and a mission nobody else was willing to take. He spent 3 years inside, built a secret resistance network, and documented crimes so extreme that when he finally escaped and delivered his report to the Allies, they concluded it was too unbelievable to act on. The man who risked everything to tell the truth was ignored, and after the war, the country he had sacrificed everything for arrested him, tortured him, and shot him dead. His name was Witold Pilecki. For 40 years after his execution, speaking that name in Poland was dangerous. To understand what Pilecki did, you have to understand what Poland was in 1940. And the answer is that it was disappearing. Germany had invaded from the west in September 1939. The Soviet Union had invaded from the east 17 days later. In less than a month, a country of 35 million people had been carved between two dictatorships. Warsaw fell. The government fled into exile in London. The Polish army, or what remained of it, went underground. And in this occupied, dismembered country, a network of resistance fighters began organizing almost immediately. The Armia Krajowa, the Home Army, one of the largest resistance movements in occupied Europe. Witold Pilecki was born in 1901 in Western Russia, into a family with a long tradition of Polish military service and resistance against occupation. He had fought in the Polish-Soviet War of 1920 as a teenager, returned to civilian life as a farmer and landowner, and when Germany invaded in 1939, he fought in the September campaign until the collapse. Then he went underground, took a false identity, and joined the resistance in Warsaw. By the summer of 1940, Auschwitz had been operating for several months. The camp had been established in May 1940 in the town of Auschwitz in southern Poland, initially to hold Polish political prisoners. Reports filtering through the resistance were fragmentary and confused. People were going in. Almost nobody was coming out. But the scale of what was happening, the systematic nature of it, was not yet understood even by those closest to it. Pilecki proposed to find out. His plan was simple in concept and suicidal in execution. He would enter the camp as a prisoner, observe everything, organize a resistance network from inside, and find a way to communicate intelligence to the outside world. The Home Army gave him a false identity. He became Tomasz Serafiński. On September 19, 1940, Pilecki deliberately walked into a street roundup in Warsaw. German soldiers were sweeping a neighborhood, pulling men off the streets for transport east. Pilecki joined the crowd being herded toward the trucks. 2 days later, he was inside Auschwitz, prisoner number 40859. What he found there was worse than anything the fragmentary reports had suggested. Prisoners were worked to exhaustion on starvation rations. Beatings were constant and arbitrary. Men died daily from overwork, exposure, and deliberate cruelty. The SS guards operated with total impunity. Within weeks of his arrival, Pilecki began the work he had come to do. Quietly, carefully, one trusted prisoner at a time, he began building cells of 5 men each. Each cell knew only its own members. If one man broke under interrogation, he could betray at most 5 people. The network grew slowly, invisibly, hidden inside the daily horror of the camp. Let me put you inside that camp for a moment. It is the winter of 1941. You are Tomasz Serafiński, prisoner number 48059, and you have been here for over a year. Every morning you stand at roll call in the freezing dark while the count is taken, sometimes for hours, while men next to you collapse from cold and exhaustion. Every day you work until your body is at the edge of what it can sustain. Every night you sleep in an overcrowded block, listening to men cough and cry and die around you. And every day, underneath the performance of a broken prisoner, you are doing something else entirely. You are watching, you are counting, you are memorizing the layout of the camp, the patterns of the guards, the names of SS officers who commit specific acts. You are passing notes written in invisible ink made from urine. You are building a network of men who trust each other with their lives, because trusting the wrong person means death, not just for yourself, but for everyone connected to you. You do not know if anyone on the outside is receiving your messages. You do not know if the reports you are risking your life to compile are reaching anyone who can act on them. You know only that you chose to be here and that you cannot stop. By 1942, Pilecki's network inside Auschwitz had grown to several hundred members. Intelligence was being passed outside the camp through various channels, including notes hidden in the laundry sent out for washing and messages carried by prisoners who were released. The reports described in precise detail the systematic murder that was accelerating around him. Gas chambers were being constructed. The scale of killing was expanding beyond anything that had existed before. In April 1943, Pilecki escaped. He and 2 other prisoners overpowered a guard during a night shift at a camp bakery, cut the phone lines, and fled into the surrounding countryside. He reached the Home Army, wrote his comprehensive report on everything he had witnessed and organized inside Auschwitz, and delivered it to the Polish government in exile in London, who forwarded it to the British and American authorities. The response was not what he had spent 3 years risking his life to earn. Allied commanders acknowledged receiving the reports. They did not act on them. The explanation offered after the war was that the information was considered too extreme to be credible, that the scale of industrialized murder described in the reports was beyond what decision-makers could accept as real. Whether this was genuine disbelief or a choice not to engage with information that demanded a response nobody was prepared to give is a question historians still argue over. What is not in question is the result. The camps continued to operate, the killing continued to accelerate, and Pilecki's 3 years of documented testimony sat in files while the machinery he had described ran without interruption. But here is the part of this story that is almost impossible to absorb, and it is the part that defines Pilecki's place in history. After the war ended, Pilecki stayed in Poland and continued working for the Home Army's successor organization, gathering intelligence on Soviet activities in the new communist-controlled government. In 1947, he was arrested by the Polish secret police, the UB, which was effectively controlled by Soviet advisors. He was accused of espionage, of working for foreign intelligence services, of planning armed attacks on government officials. The charges were fabrications. The trial was a formality. Pilecki was tortured during interrogation by his own account so severely that he later told his wife that Auschwitz had been easier to bear. He was convicted and sentenced to death. On May 25, 1948, Witold Pilecki was executed by a single shot to the back of the head in a Warsaw prison. He was 47 years old. The communist government classified all information about him. His name was removed from historical records. Mentioning him publicly was dangerous. His wife and children lived under surveillance. The man who had voluntarily entered Auschwitz, organized resistance from inside the worst place in Europe, escaped to tell the world what he had seen, fought in the Warsaw Uprising of 1944, and continued serving his country after the war ended, was erased. He was not rehabilitated until 1990, after the fall of communism. His full story was not widely known outside Poland until the late 1990s and 2000s, as archives were opened and researchers began reconstructing what he had done. Poland has since awarded him its highest military honor. Streets and schools bear his name. A museum exhibit documents his time inside Auschwitz. The world is still catching up. There is no convenient framework for Witold Pilecki. He was not a soldier who performed an extraordinary act in the heat of battle. He was a man who sat down in a quiet room, understood clearly what he was proposing to do, and chose to do it anyway. He chose Auschwitz. He chose 3 years of systematic horror. He chose to escape and report and be ignored. He chose to stay in Poland after the war when he could have left. And at the end of all those choices, his own government put a bullet in the back of his head. He was asked once, after his escape, why he had volunteered. His answer was simple: someone had to. Nobody asked him to do it. Nobody who knew what it meant would have asked. He went because he decided that someone should, and that the someone might as well be him. The world ignored him. History is still learning his name.